Have you ever paused mid-scroll, maybe looking at a news photo, um, or even a historical picture, one showing suffering, and felt that pang, you know, that jolt?
Yeah, or maybe just feeling completely overwhelmed by it all.
Exactly. And then you ask yourself, does that feeling, does it actually do anything? Does it move us to action, or, well, does it just leave us feeling sort of powerless, numb?
It's a really fascinating question and maybe a bit uncomfortable sometimes because our sort of default emotional responses, well, they aren't always the most effective, are they?
No, they're not. So today we're doing a deep dive into the work of John Berger, an incredible thinker on images, photography, and this really surprisingly complex idea of compassion.
We're going to try and unpack his unique ideas, like what he means when he says an image pinches you.
And then we'll explore some pretty powerful criticisms that suggest compassion might actually be, well, a weak political force.
But here's where it gets really interesting. We'll then look at why Berger, despite these critiques, still believed it was so important, why he championed its significance.
So our mission here is to really get Berger's nuanced perspective, how images can connect with us, like viscerally. What is true compassion for him?
And how it might link, or maybe how it doesn't link, to political action, to solidarity. We're working through the articles and notes you've shared, trying to shed light on something we think we understand.
But through Berger's eyes, it becomes much more complex, more active maybe,
Yeah.
and definitely intriguing.
Yeah, active is a good word for it.
And Berger, he just has this amazing way of describing these abstract feelings with such vivid, almost physical metaphors, like this pinching.
Mhm.
He says an image pinches you, but clarifies it's not with a finger and thumb, which is how you'd normally think of a pinch,
Right,
right?
as usual way.
It says it's pinched between two fingers. It's so specific. It feels like a very particular, almost deliberate kind of attention. I really want to explore what those two fingers could be.
And that's exactly where Berger's unique thinking comes in. We're about to get into a discussion where, an emotion like compassion, which seems so positive,
Yeah, obviously.
gets critiqued sometimes quite sharply as a political tool. But Berger's thought kind of acts as a bridge, doesn't it?
That bridge between.
Between that really personal experience of seeing an image and its potential for, well, wider political meaning in our very visual world.
Okay, let's unpack that pinch then. Berger talks about this personal experience in The Shape of the Pocket. It's about a portrait by Jericho.
Ah, yes, the Jericho portrait.
He writes, "The image pinched. In it there is a compassion that refutes indifference and is irreconcilable with an easy hope." But what really grabs me is that phrase again, a pinch between two fingers.
It's not casual, it suggests something sustained, deliberate.
Exactly, and this links somehow to his idea about finding a center or home in a world that feels, well, pretty disoriented. That seems really key to his thinking too.
It absolutely is. This concept of home helps us understand how Berger grounds these ideas about engagement, about where we stand.
Okay.
In his 1996 documentary, A Kind of Grace, he uses this really profound analogy of the cross as a metaphor for home.
The cross, how does that work?
Well, he describes a horizontal line. That's like all the roads leading out from a village, connecting you across the land to other places, to the world. It's how you navigate the earth.
Right, so the horizontal is about connection, journey, our place in the world physically.
Yep.
Makes sense. What about the other axis, the vertical line?
The vertical line, he says, that's where the dead and maybe the unborn too travel up and down between earth and heaven, you could say.
Okay.
And here's his main point. Where those two lines cross, that is a place which is really home.
Ah, the intersection.
Exactly. When you're at that intersection, he says, the question of finding sense is much easier to answer. It's where the earthly meets the transcendent.
That feels very intuitive, actually, that crossing point of the tangible and maybe the spiritual, the immediate and the eternal,
Yeah.
creating a stable core.
It is powerful. But then Berger immediately adds this really sobering observation. He asks, but in how many places of the world is that now true? In fact, very few. It's almost a lament, isn't it, for a lost sense of being centered, a feeling of global displacement.
Yeah, it really sounds like it. The conditions for finding that home are rare now.
Indeed. And this feeling of widespread disorientation, it deeply shapes his view on compassion itself.
How so?
He goes on to say, I don't think that anybody can reasonably claim compassion.
Claim it, like you can't just decide to be compassionate.
Sort of. He says, because I think that when compassion occurs, it's a kind of miracle, and it only comes by a kind of grace.
Wow. a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Grace. That frames it very differently, not just an everyday feeling.
No, not a default emotion at all. Something rare, profound almost, unearned, unexpected.
Okay, so if compassion is this rare miracle, then what are these two fingers in the pinch he was talking about with the Jericho? He suggests they're specific forces.
Yes. The first finger, he suggests, is what he calls the current normality of madness. This was back in 1991 he was writing this.
The normality of madness. What does he mean by that?
He sees this madness as the stark, almost incomprehensible gap between the huge amount of suffering in the world and any adequate explanation or solution for it.
Like, things are so bad it doesn't make sense.
Kind of.
Yeah.
He points to Jericho's portraits from the madhouse, the asylum. He notes how the sitter's eyes are looking elsewhere, askance, not meeting your gaze.
Right, and then he connects that to his present day. He writes, how often today can one encounter a not dissimilar glance refusing to focus on the near?
Huh.
I mean, that feels incredibly relevant now, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That sense of disconnect when faced with overwhelming news, that feeling of not being able to truly focus or comprehend the suffering around us.
Yeah. He observes that some periods, madness seems rare, but then others, like the one we have just entered, when madness appears to be typical.
Makes you wonder what he'd say about our news feeds today.
Definitely. So, okay, that's the first finger, this normality of madness, this overwhelming disconnect. What's the second finger doing the pinching?
This is where it gets really interesting because Berger says, quite boldly, that the second finger comes from the compassion of the image.
The compassion of the image, not just in the image or from the viewer.
Exactly, which is a big claim for him because, like you said, he usually sees compassion as rare, and he's written a lot about how images of suffering can often just, well, disable us.
Right. I remember in his essay, Photographs of Agony, he talks about how looking at those images, the moment can just engulf us. We feel despair or indignation, and our own lives seem hopelessly inadequate, kind of paralyzing.
Totally paralyzing. So the question is, if photos of agony can be so disempowering, what's different about this Jericho painting? Or maybe any image that manages this? How can Berger talk about the compassion of the image as an active force?
Yeah, what makes it compassionate?
Well, this leads us straight into a really important debate in political theory, the critique of compassion as a useful political force. James Johnson wrote an article on this, The Arithmetic of Compassion. He really lays out why many thinkers find compassion problematic, especially with images and politics.
How does he frame that?
He starts with lines from a poem by Zbigniew Herbert. Mr. Kajita reads the newspaper. It goes, "For 120 dead you search on a map, in vain too great a distance covers them like jungle."
Wow, that hits hard. The numbers, the distance,
Yeah.
they just erase the individuals.
Precisely. It illustrates a core problem. Sheer scale and distance can just shut down our capacity for individual compassion. It breaks the mechanism.
And doesn't Hannah Arendt make a similar point, a really sharp one?
She does. Arendt argued that compassion, true compassion, needs that deep, empathetic connection with one person's suffering.
Right, the specific individual.
Which, for her, makes it pretty much irrelevant for wider political activism. You can't really feel that intensely for thousands or millions.
And if you try.
She thought if you try to scale it up, it just collapses into pity. And Arendt saw pity as, quote, an anathema to political solidarity.
Why anathema? Why so bad?
She saw pity as, well, first, inarticulate, you feel bad, but you don't necessarily know what to do. Second, it's asymmetrical. It sets up a hierarchy, right? The person pitying is here, the pitied person is down there.
Okay, yeah.
And third, and maybe most damningly, pity actually depends on the suffering continuing. It can even reinforce the power structures that cause the suffering in the first place because it doesn't challenge them. It just feels bad about them.
So it's passive, reinforces inequality, and doesn't lead to change. Got it.
Exactly. And Johnson points out that even Susan Sontag, who wrote so much about photography, was very aware of compassion's limits.
What does Sontag say?
She called compassion an unstable emotion. Her famous line is, "It needs to be translated into action or it withers."
Ah, so it fades if you don't act on it.
Yes, but she was also pretty skeptical about whether you could really get beyond that focus on the individual that compassion seems to require.
And didn't she critique Sebastian Salgado's work on this basis? His big projects like migrations?
She did. Sontag felt that by globalizing suffering, making it look so vast and epic, Salgado's pictures made the problem seem too vast, too irrevocable, to be changed by any local political intervention.
So the scale itself becomes overwhelming.
For Sontag, yes. The result was that compassion can only flounder. It just gets lost in the enormity of it all. That's a really strong critique of images that are meant to move us.
It really is, especially when you hear Salgado himself. Didn't he say something about this?
He did. He famously said, "If the person looking at my pictures only feels compassion, I will believe that I have failed completely."
Wow. So even the photographer felt compassion wasn't the end goal, maybe not even the right path.
It suggests he saw it as insufficient, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a distraction from something more effective.
So, okay, if we take all these critiques seriously, Herbert's distance, Arndt's pity versus solidarity, Sontag's floundering compassion, even Salgado's own words, it seems like raw compassion, however well-intentioned, struggles to scale up. It can reinforce inequality. It might just wither away.
It seems like an emotional dead end for real political change, according to these arguments.
Through, if not that raw emotion, what's the alternative? How do you galvanize action or foster real connection across those distances?
Well, this is where many thinkers, including Johnson discussing Salgado, turn to the idea of solidarity.
Solidarity, right? How's that different?
Johnson argues Salgado's work, especially Migrations, actually tries to avoid generating just simple compassion.
Oh. What does he do differently?
By not focusing too heavily on just one individual's plight all the time, he presents these distinct images but puts them together in series.
The sequence matters.
Massively. Their closeness, their proximity builds up this powerful collective effect. He shifts the camera's focus, sometimes it's individuals, then groups, then these huge populated landscapes.
So it keeps you moving, prevents settling on just one story.
Right. Johnson calls it a quasi-disorientation for the viewer. It's unsettling, maybe, but it's meant to lead not to pity for one, but to a sense of solidarity with the many.
That makes sense. A shared condition rather than just individual tragedy.
Yeah.
So how would Arndt define solidarity then, if pity is bad?
Solidarity, drawing from Arndt, again via Johnson, is about something much more intentional, more deliberate. It's about being able to establish deliberately and, as it were, dispassionately a community of interest with the exploited and the oppressed.
Dispassionately. That's interesting. Not based on feeling.
Less on spontaneous feeling, more on a conscious choice, a recognition of shared interests or a shared struggle. It's seen as a provocation for rectifying suffering and an inspiration for action.
Unlike pity, which, as he said, depends on the suffering continuing.
Exactly. Solidarity wants to end the suffering. It actively challenges compassion to be solidarity. It demands more from us than just feeling bad.
Okay, so it's a more active, chosen alignment. Makes sense.
Precisely. Although it's fair to say not everyone agrees on Salgado. T.J. Clark, for example, he recognized Salgado's importance, but felt his work focused maybe somewhat more than the struggle to challenge such hardship. A slightly different read.
Okay. Nuances within the critique. But still, after hearing all those really powerful arguments against compassion as a political force, that it's unstable, individualistic, potentially passive, I'm genuinely struck that Berger still holds on to it.
Right. It almost seems to fly in the face of that logic we just unpacked.
He describes this sensate-bodied response to images being forcibly touched. He seems to suggest this isn't a political dead end, but maybe an alternative way to engage. How does he justify sticking with compassion?
It's a great question, and what's really fascinating is who he draws on. He calls upon Simone Weil.
Weil, another profound thinker.
And Weil compares compassion to creative attention. She likens it almost to genius.
Creative attention, what does that mean?
It involves, Weil says, being able to say to him, "What are you going through?" And she emphasizes that simply looking isn't enough. It is indispensable to know how to look at him in a certain way.
So it's not passive feeling. It's an active, almost disciplined way of seeing, an act of profound engagement.
Exactly. The viewer has an active role in trying to understand the other's experience. It's work.
And Berger connects this to Antigone, too, the Greek tragedy.
He does. He notes that the compassion Antigone represents is transcendent, yes, but also in the very heart of its manifestation, it is strangely entirely concrete and is historical. It happens in the world in a specific situation.
So not just an abstract ideal.
No. And then he says this, compassion has no place in the natural order of the world. Like, the world naturally runs on indifference or necessity, but compassion opposes this order and is therefore best thought of a being supernatural. It is to defy necessity.
Wow. So compassion for Berger is almost an act of rebellion against the way things are. A defiance.
A defiance of indifference, a defiance of necessity, yeah.
Okay, and where does Walter Benjamin fit into this? You mentioned him earlier. Berger seems very influenced by him.
Hugely. Both Berger and Benjamin connect these tactile bodily sensations with memory. Memory for them isn't just recalling facts in order.
Yeah.
It's more like a spark or a flash, something that disrupts linear history, leaves an imprint. It's a much more physical, embodied sense of the past erupting into the present.
Like feeling the past almost.
Kind of. And Benjamin's idea of the optical unconscious in photography is crucial here.
The optical unconscious.
Yeah, the camera's ability to capture things the naked eye misses, hidden details, fleeting expressions. It reveals, Benjamin thought, hitherto unseen, sights and hence sights of knowledge, new ways of knowing locked in the image.
Okay. And photography itself, for Benjamin.
Yeah.
It's an arrested moment, right? Frozen time.
Yes, but it's not just frozen. That arrested moment demands something from us. It demands we search for its history, understand its context so we can inform the future.
Wow.
By finding, as Benjamin put it, the inconspicuous spot where in the immediacy of that long-forgotten moment the future subsists so eloquently. It's about finding the future hidden in that frozen past moment.
So it's not just looking back. It's about redeeming the past, making it live again meaningfully in the present.
That's exactly the idea, redeeming the past. And Berger echoes this so clearly in The Uses of Photography.
What does he say there?
He writes, if the past becomes an integral part of the process of people making their own history, then all photographs would reacquire a living context. It's about giving images back their story, their connection to ongoing life and struggle.
He's politicizing time itself, isn't he? Seeing history not as a smooth line, but as these flashes, these interruptions where we can intervene, understand differently.
Precisely, interrupting that smooth narrative of the victors, perhaps.
And this changes the photographer's role too, doesn't it? Berger suggests something different there, echoing Benjamin's author as producer.
Absolutely. Berger suggests the photographer should see themselves not so much as a reporter to the rest of the world, like an outsider looking in,
But rather
as a recorder for those involved in the events photographed, making images addressed to those suffering what they depict.
wow, that completely flips the dynamic.
Yeah.
It's not about showing suffering to us, the actual viewers. It's about recording experience for the community experiencing it.
It shifts the whole power relationship, the whole direction of the gaze. It becomes about shared experience, internal witnessing, not just external observation.
So after all this wild creative attention, Benjamin's flashes of memory, the photographer as recorder, what's the ultimate goal of this different way of engaging? Where does Berger land?
He comes back to a surprisingly simple, yet I think incredibly profound idea. Recognition,
Recognition.
he says. To look at a person with recognition and attention. Recognition, the word, appears to make no claim and to sound poor, yet that perhaps is how it should be.
Huh. Sounds humble, almost weak, like he says. Why recognition?
Maybe because it's about acknowledging the other person's reality, their history, their presence, without claiming to fully understand or solve it, but simply to see it, to attend to it. It cuts through the indifference.
That makes me think of Benjamin again, his essay, The Storyteller. Doesn't he talk about the traces left behind?
He does. The idea that traces of the storyteller cling to the story the way the handprint of the potter clings to the clay vessel. It's that tangible connection.
So Berger's pinch between two fingers.
Hmm.
Maybe that's it. That physical, tactile imprint, a crossing point, like his cross analogy, of the place of action and traction of before and after.
Exactly. It's not just seeing an image passively. It's feeling the weight, the history, the human trace within it.
Okay, so we've really traveled quite a path here. From Berger's very visceral pinch by an image.
Through those deep critical debates about whether compassion works politically, contrasting it with solidarity.
And landing back on Berger's quite unique defense of compassion, but a very specific kind of compassion.
Yeah, what's really clear is that Berger's approach, it's not naive at all. It's deeply thought through. It's rooted in a physical, historical, and ultimately political understanding of how we engage with images and with each other's suffering.
So the main takeaway seems to be that Berger, drawing on thinkers like Weil and Benjamin, gives us this powerful way to rethink compassion.
Right, not as that passive, fleeting emotion that just flounders when things get too big or too difficult.
But as an active, almost defiant act, that creative attention.
Exactly, a recognition that pushes back against the natural order of just ignoring things or feeling overwhelmed. It sparks meaning and maybe, just maybe, the potential for action.
It really hinges on that seemingly small word, recognition. But it carries so much weight in how we look at the world, especially images of suffering.
It really does.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. The next time you encounter an image of suffering, whether scrolling online or in a gallery, just pause for a second.
Yeah, and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is it just pity, that sort of distant, maybe slightly superior feeling that aren't warned about?
Or could it be something else? Something closer to Berger's idea of compassion, that pinch between two fingers that asks for something more from you.
And if it is that kind of compassion, what sort of creative attention, what kind of recognition could you bring to that moment?
How might you let that past moment depicted in the image flash into your present, as Benjamin might say, in a way that truly matters? A way that connects, that recognizes shared humanity, and maybe, just maybe, points towards understanding or even action, rather than just turning away.